Imagine this. The rosary hanging on your wall could be the silent cause of the unrest in your home, the unexplained tension you've been feeling. This is not about superstition or fear, but about a profound spiritual truth shared by Pope Francis. In his wisdom, he has cautioned us about the subtle ways darkness can enter spaces that should be filled with peace. Just last week, I received a letter from a woman whose family seemed to be falling apart. Endless arguments, financial burdens, and even health issues that doctors couldn't explain. After watching one of our videos, she took a closer look at the old rosary hanging in her room, a black one she had found in an estate sale. What happened next was extraordinary. As she removed the rosary, the atmosphere in her home shifted dramatically over just a few days. It was a transformation most could never have predicted. There are signs, often overlooked, that not all spiritual items bring blessings. Some rosaries, especially those in 3 specific colors, may not serve as shield of divine protection, but instead open doors to negative influences. What's even more unsettling is that the most beautiful, most unique ones we find in stores or online are often the very ones that carry hidden dangers. Today, I will reveal which colors to avoid, why these seemingly innocent beads could be impacting your home's spiritual atmosphere, and the 6 signs that a rosary might be spiritually compromised. The third type I'll mention is particularly alarming. Despite its hidden dangers, it has become increasingly common in Catholic homes. Are you ready to uncover what might be hiding in plain sight in your prayer corner? After hearing this reflection grounded in spiritual discernment, you may never look at rosaries the same way again. If you resonate with the wisdom shared here, write "Guide my steps, Lord" in the comments. Your words might be the lifeline someone needs to address a situation they didn't even know was affecting their home. Let me take you deeper into understanding the true power of the rosary and why that very power makes it vulnerable to spiritual distortion. The rosary is not just a string of beads. It is a profound spiritual weapon. When prayed with sincere devotion, it creates an unbreakable chain of prayer that connects us directly to the Blessed Virgin Mary, and through her, to Christ himself. Since its revelation to Saint Dominic in the 10th century, the rosary has been a vessel for countless spiritual victories, conversions, and miracles. Yet, this very power is what makes the rosary susceptible to misuse. Sacred objects throughout history have often been targeted for distortion and desecration. As Pope Francis once said in a homily, "The devil prowls like a lion, seeking whom he may devour, but can only reach as far as we let him. Keep your distance." There have been cases where objects, seemingly holy, carried a disturbing spiritual weight. Many pilgrims have shared stories of items they brought with them being refused blessings. Some were even advised to destroy them. This is a powerful reminder that even what appears sacred can be spiritually compromised. A woman from Naples once brought what seemed like an ordinary rosary to a priest. Before she could even explain, the priest, with keen spiritual insight, told her, "Take that away. It was not made for prayer, but for something else entirely." Upon further investigation, it was revealed that the rosary had once been used in occult rituals before being disguised as a Catholic sacramental. This moment of discernment uncovered a vital spiritual truth. Not everything that looks sacred is truly holy. In today's world, where religious items are mass-produced and sold as mere fashion statements or decorative pieces, this warning has never been more urgent. Many Catholics, eager to collect rosaries of all colors and designs, may not realize the spiritual implications these objects carry. We must remember that sacramentals are not just physical objects. They are extensions of our faith, conduits of grace, and should be treated with the utmost reverence. Let me share something with you that could help deepen your spiritual journey. I've created a special resource, an ebook titled The Spiritual Secrets of the Rosary. It includes powerful prayers, reflections rooted in tradition, and practical guidance to strengthen your walk with faith. You can find the link in the comments if you're ready to explore how it could transform your spiritual life. Now, back to our discussion. What makes certain colored rosaries potentially dangerous? Let's look closely at 3 specific types that could unknowingly affect the spiritual health of your home and family. There are 3 types of rosaries that require careful attention, each carrying spiritual risks that might not be immediately obvious to those who own them. The first one to be cautious of is the completely black rosary. While black traditionally symbolizes mourning and penance in Catholicism, it has also been associated with dark practices. This is especially true for rosaries not acquired from trusted sources, ones that have been used in rituals contradicting the Christian faith. There's a powerful story shared by a spiritual director about a woman who was tormented by unexplained nightmares and a deep sense of despair. Despite prayers and confessions, her distress persisted. When she finally sought help, the priest inquired about a dark object near her bed, a black rosary she had bought from an antique shop, attracted by its ornate silver crucifix. The priest instructed her to get rid of it, revealing that the rosary had been consecrated in ways far removed from Christian devotion. Within days of following his advice, the woman felt a deep sense of peace return, and her spiritual struggles lifted. Pope Francis, with his remarkable gift of discernment, is able to detect such spiritual influences, not through mere intuition, but through profound, divine sensitivity confirmed by many witnesses. He can sense the history of an object, especially those involved in spiritual practices, and know whether they have been used for good or for harm. This unique gift of discernment allowed him to recognize black rosaries that had been used in rituals invoking powers that opposed the Christian faith, even when these objects appeared entirely ordinary to the untrained eye. What troubled him most about these black rosaries wasn't the color itself, but the way in which they had been adopted by certain groups, chosen precisely because of their ability to absorb and hold on to dark spiritual energies. He explained that objects in black, when used in negative spiritual practices, could act as vessels for harmful influences that linger long after rituals are over. Though these influences were invisible to most, they were far from benign. They created what he described as spiritual interference, an unseen disturbance that disrupted the flow of prayer and unsettled the inner peace of those who used them. The second category that raised concern were blood-red rosaries. While red traditionally symbolizes the blood of Christ and the martyrdom of saints in Catholic symbolism, some rosaries with deep, intense red hue carried associations with blood rituals and practices that twisted this sacred meaning. He could easily distinguish between rosaries that were properly read and those tainted by negative spiritual influences. He clarified that the color itself was not the issue. The real concern lay in the intent behind the creation and previous use of these objects. Some red rosaries had been crafted specifically for rituals involving blood pacts or summoning powers outside of the Christian tradition. Even after being blessed, these rosaries could retain spiritual residue that interfered with peaceful prayer and harmony. Throughout his ministry, he encountered many cases where devotees experienced spiritual struggles linked to blood-red rosaries obtained from dubious sources. One particularly haunting case involved a family that began to experience escalating discord after receiving an antique red rosary as a gift. The father, once calm and patient, started displaying uncharacteristic agitation. His teenage son suffered from severe insomnia, while the younger child became terrified of certain rooms in the house. Upon seeking spiritual guidance, the priest immediately inquired about the red rosary in their prayer room. The mother, taken aback, hadn't realized the rosary's potential impact. The priest explained that this rosary had been used in rituals that blended Catholic prayers with invocations to other entities, causing a spiritual confusion that disrupted the family's environment. After removing the rosary and blessing their home, the family soon experienced peace returning to their relationships and their dwelling. The third category, and perhaps the most alarming, involved multicolored rosaries made of unconventional materials that resembled amulets or talismans from non-Christian traditions. These rosaries often included beads that resembled eyes, unusual symbols embedded in the crucifix, or elements from other spiritual systems. These hybrid rosaries, he called them, were representations of spiritual confusion. They merged authentic Catholic devotion with incompatible practices. In today's world, where spiritual eclecticism is on the rise, these rosaries have become more and more common. Marketed as inclusive or universal prayer tools, they often seem harmless or even ecumenical to the untrained observer. But these hybrid rosaries present unique challenges because they blur the boundaries of prayer. Prayer in the Christian tradition is meant to be directed toward God through specific channels of grace, channels that become distorted when mixed with conflicting spiritual elements. When prayer tools blend elements from various spiritual traditions, each with its own distinct view of the divine, they can create what he described as spiritual static. This interference disrupts the clear and focused communication we seek with God. The rise of the modern spiritual marketplace, both online and in physical stores, has made these hybrid prayer tools more readily available. Some of these items incorporate crystals, claiming specific energetic properties, or symbols from various world religions, even elements like the evil eye meant to ward off negative forces. They are often marketed as pathways to spiritual growth, but in truth, they dilute the authentic connection to God. A particularly troubling trend he noted is the commercialization of rosaries, once sacred objects, now sold as fashion accessories or decorative items, far removed from their spiritual purpose. When sacred objects are reduced to mere style statements, their spiritual integrity is compromised. While this doesn't necessarily make them spiritually dangerous in the same way as objects tied to opposing rituals, it creates a different kind of spiritual confusion, one that trivializes what should be revered. How do we identify potentially problematic rosaries? He offered a few vital signs. First, consider their origin. Be cautious of rosaries from unknown sources, those found in secondhand stores, flea markets, or gifted by individuals whose spiritual background is unclear. These rosaries may not carry the sacred energy we intend to draw from them. Second, listen to your inner response when using them in prayer. Authentic sacramentals typically bring a sense of peace and focus, but if you feel distracted, anxious, or spiritually heavy while praying with a certain rosary, it may be signaling spiritual interference. Third, examine the design. Unusual symbols, inscriptions, or modifications to the traditional rosary shape, particularly if they incorporate non-Christian elements or symbols that seem out of place, should raise concern. Next, reflect on the materials used to craft the rosary. While rosaries can be made from a variety of materials, those incorporating elements linked to specific spiritual rituals, like crystals, bones, or rare metals, should be approached with discernment. Finally, trust your intuition. If a rosary causes discomfort or unease that you cannot easily explain, don't ignore that inner sense. Often, the heart can sense danger before the mind understands it. Take a step back and reflect on how the rosary affects your prayer life. The true purpose of a rosary is to help you pray, guiding you into deeper reflection and a stronger connection with God. If you find yourself distracted, unsettled, or avoiding prayer altogether while using a particular rosary, it may not be fulfilling its sacred purpose. The true goal of the rosary is to immerse you in the mystery of Christ's life, drawing your attention in love and devotion. If a rosary begins to pull you away from that focus, it may no longer serve its intended purpose. This is not superstition. Pope Francis has spoken with clarity and compassion about these matters, not to frighten, but to awaken the faithful to profound spiritual weight some objects may carry. His wisdom encourages a mature, discerning faith, one that honors sacramentals with deep respect, never treating them lightly or indifferently. He has often reminded us that no object, regardless of its history or origin, has more power than the grace of God. Even when a rosary's spiritual history is hidden from view, its presence at home can subtly shape the atmosphere in ways we may never expect. At times, the changes are barely noticeable. They come in the form of a subtle heaviness in the air, recurring arguments that seem to have no reason, or a pervasive sense of unease that lingers in the background. These moments are often easy to dismiss, but when they persist, it's wise to pay closer attention. Through his deep pastoral insight, Pope Francis observed how spiritual disturbances often first manifest in a person's prayer life. Many devoted believers shared their struggles. Despite their heartfelt desire to pray, they felt an inexplicable resistance each time they tried. One man from Sicily described the sensation as if he were swimming against a powerful current every time he knelt to pray. After seeking spiritual guidance, he discovered that an old rosary in his living room, surrounded by strange red and black lamps, was the source of what was later recognized as spiritual interference. Once the rosary was removed, peace returned to his prayer life. But the impact of such objects isn't confined solely to prayer. They can quietly affect the spirit of an entire home. Persistent tension, trivial conflicts that escalate out of nowhere, or a lingering heaviness that never quite lifts can all be signs that something far deeper is at work. These unsettling experiences often mirror the stresses of daily life, making them easy to overlook for what they truly are. Sleep disturbances are another key signal to watch for. When several people in a household start waking up exhausted, struggling to rest, or feeling drained for no apparent reason, it may point to a spiritual influence rather than just a restless night. Pope Francis explained that during sleep, our defenses are lowered, leaving us more vulnerable to energies lingering in the environment. Interestingly, it's often children and pets who are the first to sense these unseen forces. A child refusing to enter a particular room, or a pet acting strangely near an object, can be the clearest signs that something in the space is not aligned with peace. These reactions shouldn't be feared, but should be observed with care and prayerful discernment. What stands out most in Pope Francis's teachings is the gradual nature of these spiritual effects. Disruptions don't usually make a dramatic entrance. Instead, they accumulate quietly over time, slowly eroding peace and harmony until the very atmosphere of the home begins to feel fundamentally altered. One particularly powerful testimony came from Martha, a dedicated parishioner who corresponded frequently with Pope Francis. For nearly 2 years, her once peaceful home had been overtaken by rising conflict and emotional distance. Financial issues appeared out of nowhere, and family members began to experience chronic exhaustion and irritability. What began as small disagreements gradually escalated into a constant, underlying tension that threatened to tear her family apart. In her search for guidance, she wrote a letter and was asked a simple question that startled her. "Have you recently brought any new religious objects into your home?" Martha recalled purchasing a set of beautiful rosaries from an estate sale, unique pieces in unusual colors, which she had placed around her home as spiritual keepsakes. She was advised to remove those rosaries and replace them with well-blessed ones from a trustworthy religious source. The results were remarkable. Within weeks, the atmosphere in her home began to shift. The tension lifted, relationships healed, and even financial strain that had plagued them gradually eased. It was made clear to her that spiritually compromised objects don't simply create problems from nowhere. They magnify the weaknesses and vulnerabilities already present within us. Like a magnifying glass focusing the sun's rays, they take ordinary human struggles and turn them into persistent, destructive patterns of discord. This is one reason why their influence can be so difficult to recognize. The issues they create often appear as nothing more than the natural flaws of human life, which can easily be mistaken for everyday challenges. Recognizing these signs is a first step in spiritual discernment. But what should you do if you suspect that a rosary in your home might be carrying harmful spiritual energy? What practical steps can you take to restore spiritual protection to your space? Let's explore the guidance he offered, advice rooted in faith and prudence. He provided clear, actionable advice for those who found troubling rosaries in their homes. His approach was a balance of spiritual discernment and practical steps, emphasizing that both faith and reason are needed when dealing with such matters. The first step he recommended was a careful examination of the religious items in your home. This wasn't about fear or searching for problems that aren't there. Rather, it's about becoming more mindful of the objects we often overlook. Take a closer look at each rosary, paying attention to its origin, the materials used, and any unusual features that deviate from traditional designs. Ask yourself, where did it come from? Who created it? What intentions were behind its making? If you discover rosaries that seem concerning, whether black, red, or oddly multicolored with unfamiliar elements, he offered specific guidance on how to address them. Importantly, he didn't suggest throwing them away immediately, as the issue wasn't simply physical. For rosaries with unclear origins but no overtly troubling characteristics, he advised having them blessed by a priest. Most priests are familiar with the blessing process and can do so after Mass or during office hours. The blessing reclaims the object for its sacred purpose, wiping away any misuse or negative associations. However, for rosaries that evoke genuine spiritual discomfort or show clear signs of harm, a different course of action was recommended. These rosaries should be brought to a priest experienced in spiritual matters, who can discern whether the object requires further blessing or, in some cases, needs to be reverently disposed of through special prayers and rituals. The proper way to dispose of blessed items that cannot be repurposed, he explained, is to return them to the earth, typically by burning or burying them after prayer. This act should be done with the utmost reverence, acknowledging that even compromised sacred items deserve to be treated with respect. Prevention, he stressed, is just as vital. When acquiring new rosaries, he outlined 3 essential points: the proper source, proper blessing, and proper intention. They should only be obtained from reputable religious sources, such as church-affiliated stores, well-established Catholic bookstores, or directly from religious communities. Before use, they should always be blessed and treated with reverence, never as decorative accessories or mere fashion statements. He particularly encouraged the use of traditional rosaries crafted from simple materials like wood, glass, or basic metals, made by religious communities as part of their contemplative work. He explained that such rosaries carry the added grace of having been created in an environment steeped in prayer. For those who have encountered negative spiritual influences, he recommended a thoughtful and holistic approach to restore spiritual balance within the home. This approach included having the home blessed by a priest, creating a dedicated prayer space filled with well-blessed religious items, and establishing a regular rhythm of family prayer, particularly praying with the rosary in the spirit it was intended for. One practical suggestion he often gave was to create what he called a spiritual shield for the home. This involved placing well-blessed sacramentals, such as a crucifix, holy water, and a simple, traditional rosary near entryways and in bathrooms. When used with sincere devotion, these sacred objects help create an environment that is spiritually protected, ensuring that God's peace fills the home. Throughout these teachings, Pope Francis emphasized one essential truth: the power is not found in the objects themselves, but in the faith, intention, and divine blessing they carry. A simple wooden rosary, properly blessed and prayed with devotion, holds far more spiritual significance than even the most ornate, extravagant rosary treated as nothing more than a talisman or decoration. As we bring this reflection to a close, let us carry these insights forward to develop a deeper understanding of spiritual protection for our homes and families. When we consider the true spiritual significance of the rosary, we are reminded that its true power lies in our unwavering faith and our hearts turned toward God, not in the object itself. The rosary, when used correctly, is a powerful aid to prayer. Its strength comes not from the beads, but from the intention behind them. Pope Francis wanted us to understand that discernment in our spiritual lives should extend to everything we invite into our homes. The black rosaries, the blood-red beads, and those with unusual colors and designs carry meaning not because of any inherent evil in their form or color, but because of how they may have been used or the purpose for which they were created. Our spiritual journey requires both faith and discernment. Pray, hope, and don't worry is a comforting phrase, but we are also called to act wisely. Taking the time to examine the rosaries in our homes, ensuring they come from trustworthy sources and are properly blessed, is a simple yet powerful act of spiritual awareness. By doing so, the rosary becomes what it was always meant to be, a lifeline of prayer that connects our hearts to heaven. Now that we've reflected on the deeper purpose of prayer, let's turn our attention to the rosary itself and uncover the hidden mistakes that may be quietly diminishing its spiritual power. Have you ever wondered if you are praying the rosary in a way that truly reaches heaven? Perhaps you felt that despite your sincere devotion, your prayers haven't led to the transformation you seek. There's a reason for that, and it may be more serious than you think. Today, I want to share something Pope Francis has spoken about with great urgency. There are critical mistakes that can quietly block your prayers from rising, and you may not even realize it. This isn't just about praying more. It's about understanding why some prayers break through the heavens while others seem to fall flat. What you are about to learn might challenge everything you thought you knew about prayer. These aren't just minor oversights. They are serious spiritual errors that Pope Francis carefully addressed. These missteps can form an invisible wall between your words and divine intervention. Pause for a moment and reflect. How many times have you prayed the rosary while feeling rushed, distracted, or emotionally distant? How often have you asked yourself if there's something missing in your prayer life, a deeper connection you're overlooking? The reality is that many devout Catholics unknowingly weaken the power of their prayers through these habits. But what's truly alarming is that these tendencies can build up over years of devotion, leaving you wondering why your faithfulness hasn't produced the spiritual fruit you've longed for. This is precisely why Pope Francis has been so passionate about teaching the proper way to pray the rosary. He recognized that it's not simply about moving through the beads or mindlessly repeating words. It's about something far more profound. Today, I want to share the critical lessons he has offered about the Rosary, and I urge you to pay close attention to the third mistake he highlighted. This one might surprise you, but it could very well be the reason your prayers aren't reaching their fullest potential. What you're about to learn has the power to transform your spiritual life. These are not just surface-level prayer tips. They are profound insights that could completely reshape your relationship with the Rosary and, more importantly, its power in your life. By the end of this message, you will understand what has been holding your prayers back and, most crucially, how to change it. Stay with me, because I will also share a powerful prayer technique that Pope Francis himself practiced to ensure that his Rosary was heard in heaven. This may be the key you've been searching for to unlock a new depth in your spiritual life. If you're ready to discover these life-changing truths about the Rosary, leave a message below. Your willingness to embrace these insights could be the first step toward deep, lasting transformation. The first major mistake Pope Francis identified goes to the heart of how so many people misunderstand the Rosary. Have you ever seen someone hanging a rosary from their car mirror, wrapping it around their wrist as a charm, or tossing it in a drawer without a second thought? This is exactly what Pope Francis warned against, treating the Rosary as a good luck charm or mere decorative item. This misconception is particularly dangerous because it robs the Rosary of its true spiritual power, reducing it to nothing more than a trinket. The Rosary, as Pope Francis taught, is not magical in its physical form. Its power comes from prayer and the deep connection it fosters between our hearts and heaven. He once described it as a weapon in our hands, but a weapon that only works through prayer, not through mere possession. Think about it for a moment. Would a soldier be protected simply because he's holding an unloaded weapon? Of course not. The same is true for the Rosary. Its strength lies not in the beads, but in how we use them through focused, intentional prayer. This misconception has become so widespread that many believe they are somehow protected simply by owning a rosary. They place it on walls, carry it in purses, or wear as jewelry, but never truly engage in the kind of prayer it was designed to foster. It's like having a direct line to heaven, but never picking up the phone. The true power of the Rosary comes when we use it with intention, allowing each bead to become a stepping stone on our spiritual journey. Each prayer is an encounter with the divine. When we treat the Rosary as just another object, we sever it from its sacred purpose. If you're truly committed to deepening your spiritual life, the guidance I'm about to share will help you avoid some crucial pitfalls and reinvigorate your prayer journey. Be sure to click the link in the description to explore how this resource can support your walk of faith. But before we go any further, I must warn you, what I'm about to reveal next is even more important. The second mistake Pope Francis cautioned against may already be happening in your prayer life, often without you even realizing it. Stay with me, because understanding this could be the breakthrough your prayers have been longing for. This mistake often occurs every time you pray, slipping quietly into the ritual. It's especially dangerous because it can easily be mistaken for devotion. After all, aren't we still praying even if we rush through it? Pope Francis was clear about this. A rushed prayer is like trying to have a conversation while walking past someone on the street. The words may be spoken, but the connection is lost. He taught that each Hail Mary should be treated like a precious jewel, offered to Our Lady with full attention, not hurriedly sent her way. Think about how often you've rushed through your prayers, perhaps while driving, multitasking at home, or squeezing your rosary into an already packed schedule. Each bead pressed quickly, each prayer recited in a rush. In these moments, we may be holding the rosary, but are we truly praying? The spiritual impact of this mistake runs deep. When we rush through our prayers, we lose a contemplative heart that makes the rosary so powerful. Each mystery is meant to open a window into the life of Christ, a moment to reflect deeply and grow spiritually. But how can we truly contemplate these mysteries if we rush past them? Pope Francis taught that we should approach the rosary with the same reverence and care as if we were conversing with the Queen of Heaven. Imagine Mary sitting right in front of you. Would you check your phone or think about the next task on your list while speaking to her? To correct this error, we must shift how we approach prayer. Instead of viewing the rosary as a task to be checked off, we should see it as a sacred appointment with heaven. This means carving out time free from distractions, where we can fully enter into the presence of Our Lady. When we pray the rosary with intention, each Hail Mary becomes a moment of grace, each mystery an opportunity to meet God. The bead should glide through our fingers, not rushed but move with deliberate, thoughtful intent. Each bead, each prayer should have profound meaning and purpose. But there's an even deeper truth you need to understand. Rushing through prayer isn't just a minor issue. It's a serious mistake. The third mistake I'm about to reveal could completely invalidate your prayers, even if you take the time to pray slowly. This next insight from Pope Francis will challenge everything you thought you knew about praying with the rosary. The third mistake is subtle yet devastating, capable of cutting to the very core of your relationship with God through the rosary. This mistake is so subtle, yet so profoundly damaging, that it can transform our most genuine prayers into spiritual roadblocks. What is this critical error? It's when we treat the rosary as if it were a divine ATM, approaching it only when we have material requests and demands. Now, let me be clear. There's nothing wrong with bringing our needs before God through the rosary. In fact, we are encouraged to present our petitions to heaven. But Pope Francis identified a dangerous tendency where people turn to the rosary only when they want something, treating it like a spiritual vending machine. Insert prayers, wait for immediate results. This transactional mindset completely distorts the true purpose of the rosary. The rosary is not just a tool to obtain favors. It is a sacred path to deep spiritual transformation. When we reduce it to a list of wishes, we lose sight of its greatest power, the ability to align ourselves with God's will. Pope Francis taught that the true strength of the rosary lies in its ability to change us from within. Each mystery we contemplate, each prayer we offer, should bring us closer to understanding and accepting God's perfect plan for our lives. When our focus is solely on material desires, we limit the transformative power of the rosary. Think about this for a moment. How many times have you approached the rosary with an agenda already in mind? How often are your prayers filled with, "I want," instead of, "Let your will be done"? This is not to say we shouldn't bring our needs to God. We absolutely should. However, there's a profound difference between presenting our desires to God and attempting to bend His will to meet our own. The solution calls for a radical shift in how we approach prayer. Rather than seeing the rosary as a means to an end, we must recognize it as an end in itself, a journey of transformation, a pathway to a deeper union with God's will. This means learning to pray the rosary with an open heart, ready to receive whatever God wishes to give us, even if it doesn't align with our own expectations. When we pray the rosary correctly, our petitions become part of a larger conversation with heaven. We bring our needs, yes, but we also bring a willingness to be transformed, to be guided, to be shaped according to God's divine plan. This is a type of prayer Pope Francis referred to when he said it could move mountains, not because it changes God's mind, but because it changes us. And here's where it gets even more crucial. The fourth mistake I'm about to reveal could compound this issue even further. In fact, many people who think they've corrected the third error are actually amplifying its negative effects through another serious misstep, one that often goes unrecognized. The fourth mistake Pope Francis highlighted might be the most common today: mechanical prayer without spiritual engagement. This happens when we recite the rosary on autopilot, our minds wandering through the endless maze of daily worries and distractions. Think about it. How often do you pray the rosary while watching TV, stressing over your to-do list, or scrolling through your phone? Pope Francis was crystal clear about this. The devil laughs when prayer is offered without attention. He understood that distracted prayer isn't prayer at all. This mechanical approach to the rosary creates the illusion of devotion while missing its true essence. It's like reading a love letter without grasping its meaning, or holding a conversation while ignoring the other person entirely. When we pray in this way, we may be physically present, but spiritually we are absent. The gravity of this mistake becomes clear when we truly understand what the rosary is. It is not just a set of words, but a profound meditation on the mysteries of our faith. Each Hail Mary should be a moment of deep reflection, and each mystery should draw us further into the life of Christ and His Mother. When we recite the prayers mechanically, we miss the spiritual depth that is waiting to unfold. Pope Francis taught that true prayer requires the engagement of our entire being, our mind, heart, and soul. Each mystery should capture our imagination, and each prayer should flow naturally, not rushed but deliberate. Meditation through prayer is one of the most powerful ways to focus both our heart and mind. To enter into the sacred space, we must prepare our hearts, taking a quiet moment to consciously enter into God's presence before we begin. The Rosary is not a spiritual task to be ticked off like a checklist. It is a sacred invitation to a deep and intimate conversation with heaven, a chance to sit humbly at the feet of Our Lady and learn from her. When we approach the Rosary with this understanding, mechanical prayer becomes impossible because we are fully immersed in this divine encounter. However, there is an even more serious issue we must address. The mistake I'm about to reveal could disrupt your spiritual life, even if you've mastered the art of attentive prayer. This warning from Pope Francis concerns an error many devoted Catholics unknowingly make, with devastating consequences. The sixth mistake he identified was particularly troubling, using the Rosary as a substitute for the Holy Mass. This mistake reflects a fundamental misunderstanding of the hierarchy of our spiritual practices and can greatly hinder our spiritual growth. Pope Francis, who spent hours in devoted celebration of the Mass, made it clear that no form of devotion, no matter how powerful, can replace the infinite value of the Holy Massachusetts. While the Rosary is a potent prayer, the Mass is the actual reenactment of Christ's sacrifice on Calvary. It is the difference between viewing a picture of someone you love and being physically present with them. This misunderstanding often reveals itself in subtle ways. Some become so accustomed to their daily prayer routine that they feel it is enough. Others might skip Mass, thinking that their Rosary prayers are sufficient. This confusion blurs the distinction between these two profound gifts of our faith. The Mass isn't just a prayer or meditation. It's a real encounter with the living God, bringing us directly into communion with the body and blood of Christ. Pope Francis emphasized that the Mass holds greater value than all the rosaries we pray, not because the Rosary isn't powerful, but because the Mass is the heart of our faith, the source of all spiritual life. Think of it like this. The Rosary helps us contemplate the mysteries of Christ's life, but the Mass allows us to participate directly in them. At Mass, we aren't merely remembering Christ's sacrifice. We are present at Calvary. We don't just think about the Last Supper, we partake in it. The solution lies in understanding the proper relationship between these two practices. The Rosary should complement the Mass, deepening our participation in it, not replacing it. It's like the difference between studying nutrition and actually eating food. Both are essential, but one cannot replace the other. As we weave the Rosary into the fabric of our spiritual lives, something truly extraordinary happens. The Rosary opens our hearts, preparing us for a deeper and more profound participation in the Mass, while the Mass, in turn, infuses our Rosary prayers with greater depth and significance. Together, they form a beautiful symphony, each enriching the other and working in perfect harmony. But here's something crucial that you must grasp about applying these insights to your spiritual practice. What I'm about to share with you will show you how to take these teachings and turn them into tangible, transformative changes in your prayer life. Now that we've identified these 5 critical errors, let's focus on the practical steps Pope Francis offered for praying the Rosary effectively. These are not just lofty ideas. They are proven, actionable methods that can begin transforming your prayer life immediately. Allow me to share specific examples for each of these steps. First, to correct the error of treating the Rosary like a talisman, Pope Francis urged that we start each prayer with a conscious act of faith. Before even touching your Rosary, take a moment to remember that its power lies not in the beads, but in the prayers it inspires. Here's a simple but profound practice. Rather than leaving your Rosary on your nightstand, place it in a special prayer box or pouch. Each time you take it out, kiss the crucifix and say, "Lord, I believe in the power of this prayer." This small act will set the right intention from the very beginning, reminding you that prayer is about connection, not just routine. To counter rushed prayers, Pope Francis recommended dedicating a specific time each day for the Rosary, a sacred appointment with God. For instance, if you choose 6:30 a.m., treat it with the reverence you would an important meeting. Set your alarm 15 minutes earlier to prepare your prayer space. Light a candle, arrange a sacred image, and perhaps play soft instrumental music to create a peaceful atmosphere. Just as you wouldn't crowd an important meeting with distractions, protect and prioritize your Rosary time. For those struggling with materialistic prayer, Pope Francis suggested beginning each rosary with a simple yet powerful phrase, "Your will be done." To make this real, start by taking 3 minutes to express gratitude, naming specific blessings in your life. Then, before presenting your petitions, use this 3-step framework. Thank God for a specific blessing, present your need, and express trust in His perfect plan. For example, thank you for my family's health. I ask for your guidance in my work situation. I trust that your plan is perfect. To overcome mechanical prayer, try the visualization technique that Pope Francis himself practiced. For each mystery, focus on a specific detail. During the Annunciation, imagine the soft light in Mary's room. Hear the rustling of Gabriel's wings, and feel the weight of this divine moment. During the Crucifixion, focus on Christ's hands, the sound of the hammer, and the deep love in His eyes. These sensory details will help you remain present and deepen your meditation. Finally, when it comes to balancing the rosary with the Mass, create a spiritual schedule that honors both. For example, if you attend Mass at 9 a.m. on Saturday, pray the glorious mysteries beforehand as preparation. On weekdays, pray the rosary during your break to carry the graces of the Mass into your day. Let the rosary prayer prepare you for Mass and help you extend its blessings throughout your day. Incorporating these practical steps will transform not only your rosary prayers, but your entire spiritual life, creating a deeper, more meaningful connection with God and His will. Here is a practical framework Pope Francis recommends for making your rosary prayer a truly transformative experience. Begin with a moment of silence to center your heart. Take 2 or 3 deep breaths, allowing yourself to fully relax and focus. Set your intention clearly, but open yourself to God's will. As you engage with each mystery, fully immerse yourself before moving on to prayers. Focus your attention on a single sensory detail, whether it's the light, the sound, or the motion in the moment. Between each decade, pause for a moment, taking just 3 deep breaths to refocus your heart and mind. Finish with confidence, trusting in Mary's intercession, marked by a deliberate gesture of devotion. Remember, embracing these changes doesn't require perfection. It requires persistence. Start small, focusing on one improvement at a time. Perhaps this week, dedicate yourself to slowing down your prayers. Next week, deepen your meditation on the mysteries. Gradual progress is still progress, and every step brings you closer to a richer, more fulfilling prayer life. Create a simple list to track your prayer journey, marking off each change you've successfully made. But there's something even more powerful that awaits you. What follows will show you the profound shifts that occur when you consistently apply these practices. These changes are not just surface-level improvements. They have the power to revolutionize your entire spiritual life. As you begin praying the rosary in the way Pope Francis has guided us, profound spiritual transformations begin to unfold. These are not mere adjustments, but deep, heart-changing shifts in your connection with heaven. Let me share with you the story of Maria Thompson, a devout Catholic from Chicago, whose experience beautifully illustrates these transformations. For 20 years, I prayed a rosary every day, Maria recalls, always rushing through it on my morning commute, distracted by traffic and the demands of work. I kept my rosary hanging from my rear-view mirror, thinking its mere presence would protect me. But something was missing. I felt spiritually empty despite my daily prayers. After reflecting on the critical mistakes she had made in her rosary practice, Maria decided to make a change. I committed to waking up 30 minutes earlier each day to create a peaceful prayer space in my home, rather than rushing through my prayers. It was there that she began to meditate truthfully on each mystery. The transformation was profound, but it didn't happen overnight. Maria's story illustrates the first transformation that takes place when we stop using a rosary as a mere talisman and instead engage with it as a spiritual tool. Prayer becomes less of a one-sided monologue and more of a meaningful dialogue, a real conversation with heaven. For the first time, Maria remembers, I felt like I wasn't just reciting prayers. I was having a real conversation with Our Lady. This led to the second transformation, a heightened spiritual sensitivity. As you deepen your prayers and eliminate distractions, you'll start to notice subtle spiritual movements in your daily life. The mysteries you reflect on during the rosary begin to illuminate the events of your day. Maria experienced this firsthand. I began to see connections between the mysteries I meditated on and situations in my daily life. The Rosary was no longer just a morning prayer. It became the lens through which I viewed my entire day. The third transformation takes place in your relationship with God. When you let go of approaching a rosary with purely materialistic intentions, something extraordinary happens. Your prayers shift from being about changing your circumstances to understanding God's divine purpose within them. I used to pray mostly to have my problems solved, Maria says. But now, I find myself praying for the wisdom to understand God's will in every situation. Perhaps the most profound shift occurs in your spiritual awareness. By letting go of mechanical prayer, you drastically improve your ability to stay present during spiritual activities. This heightened focus doesn't stay confined to just prayer time. It spills over into every area of your spiritual life, including your participation in Mass and Scripture reading. Your connection to the Mass undergoes a deep transformation when you fully understand the relationship between the Rosary and the Massachusetts. Both practices grow richer and more meaningful, intertwined in a beautiful rhythm. The Rosary prepares your heart for meditation, and in turn, meditation deepens the meaning of each reflection. But what makes these transformations truly powerful is how they begin to shape every facet of your life. The peace you discover through intentional prayer starts to influence your daily decisions, guiding your actions with clarity. The insight gained from meditation helps you navigate life's challenges with a steady heart. The surrender you experience through prayer brings profound trust in God's plan. And the greatest change, Maria shared, wasn't just in the way she prayed, it was in the way she lived. Every part of her life began to reflect the peace and purpose she had found in her relationship with the Rosary. It wasn't simply about avoiding mistakes, but about unlocking the true power of this heavenly prayer. This is exactly what Pope Francis meant when he said that a Rosary prayed with devotion can change lives. It's not about checking off the right boxes or avoiding errors. It's about opening yourself to the full, transformative power of prayer. When prayed with intention, the Rosary holds the ability to deeply alter our spiritual journey. These transformations are not abstract concepts. They are tangible, real fruits born from praying the Rosary as it was meant to be prayed. As we move forward in this discussion, I will share something even more profound, advanced spiritual practices that elevate your Rosary prayers to extraordinary levels of spiritual power. Now that you have a clearer understanding of the common mistakes and their corrections, let's dive into the advanced techniques that Pope Francis used to deepen his Rosary practice. These insights take us beyond simple corrections and guide us towards spiritual excellence. Pope Francis taught that the highest form of Rosary prayer happens when we move beyond merely avoiding mistakes and begin to pray with what he called the heart of Mary. This approach transforms the Rosary from a personal devotion into a channel for divine grace, with Mary herself interceding for us. The first advanced technique is what Pope Francis called spiritual breathing. Before beginning each decade, take a deep breath while silently invoking, "Come, Holy Spirit." Then exhale while praying, "Pray for us, Mary." This simple practice harmonizes your physical rhythm with your spiritual intention, helping you enter a deeper state of reflection. The second technique focuses on what Pope Francis called living the mysteries. This goes beyond merely imagining the scenes. Instead of just visualizing them, place yourself inside each mystery, allowing its spiritual reality to transform your present moment. For example, as you contemplate the Annunciation, feel Mary's complete surrender to God as if it were your own. One of the most powerful techniques Pope Francis shares is what he calls the silence between the words. So often, we rush through prayers, moving from one to the next without pause. But Pope Francis reminds us that the brief silence between each Hail Mary is sacred. These quiet moments of stillness allow the Holy Spirit to amplify the impact of each prayer, deepening our connection to the divine. The pinnacle of Rosary prayer comes when we reach what Pope Francis describes as continuous presence. This is a state in which the mysteries we contemplate begin to transcend our daily lives, offering us a new perspective on the world around us. With each mystery, we begin to see the ordinary through the lens of the sacred truths we hold in our hearts. The Rosary is no longer just a daily devotion. It transforms into a constant state of spiritual awareness, woven seamlessly into every part of our life. These advanced techniques take time and patience to master, but their effects are nothing short of profound. They turn the Rosary from a series of prayers into a mystical experience, an intimate union with heaven. This is the kind of prayer Pope Francis speaks of when he says it has the power to move mountains and change hearts. As we reach the final piece of wisdom, we see how all of these teachings tie together. This insight is perhaps the most transformative of all. Pope Francis taught that the true power of the Rosary is revealed when it becomes not just a prayer, but a way of life. We began by identifying 5 critical mistakes, but now we realize that avoiding them is only the beginning. True transformation occurs when the Rosary becomes your spiritual compass, guiding every aspect of your life. This is what Pope Francis meant when he called the Rosary a weapon for these times, a tool that shapes and strengthens our faith in the world. Think about each mystery of the Rosary as a blueprint for living a spiritual life. The Annunciation teaches us to embrace God's will, even when it feels difficult. The Visitation shows us how to carry Christ to others. The Crucifixion teaches us to find meaning in our suffering. Each mystery reveals how we can see and understand the world through a divine perspective. That's why Pope Francis insists that the Rosary must be prayed with complete sincerity, not as a talisman, not hurriedly, not mechanically, and certainly not as a substitute for Massachusetts. When prayed with intention, it becomes a daily renewal of our commitment to God, constantly reminding us of our heavenly purpose. The true power of the Rosary lies not in the words we speak, but in how it transforms our hearts to beat in rhythm with God's will. This is a profound truth Pope Francis urges us to understand. The Rosary is not just a devotion, but a path to spiritual transformation. Now, I invite you to make a choice. Will you continue praying the Rosary as you always have, or will you commit to implementing these sacred teachings? The decision you make today has the power to deeply change the course of your spiritual journey. Here's your invitation. Over the next 21 days, make a commitment to pray the Rosary, following the wisdom of Pope Francis. Begin each prayer by clearing your mind and calming your spirit. Take time to reflect deeply on each mystery, allowing its truth to settle in your heart. Pray slowly with intention, and let every word flow from a place of surrender to God's will. Watch how this practice begins to shift your spiritual life in profound ways. If you're ready to take on this challenge, write "I accept" in the comments below. Your commitment may be the spark that encourages others to deepen their own prayer lives as well. Share this message with someone who could benefit from these teachings. You may be the vessel God uses to bring spiritual transformation to their life. And as Pope Francis often reminds us, pray, wait, and don't worry. With these powerful teachings and your dedicated commitment, your Rosary prayers can become a source of grace, not only for you, but for the entire world.